everyone doing tonight? Hey, what you call? Glad you made it. All right. So we have a case that just concluded a few months ago in my state. Has anyone heard of the Pasquotank prison escape attempt? Now, it took 8 years for the 4 men involved to face justice. Sad, isn't it? That justice sometimes moves slow as it does. So we're gonna I'm doing good, what you Nicole? I'm doing real good. So we're gonna introduce you to this case. It's made headlines here in North Carolina, and we're gonna have a little talk about it. All right. So let's get you on the screen. All right. So this is the surveillance camera from the This was during the first trial in 2019. There were 4 people involved. The first one is Michael Brady. He's a disgusting SOB. Very disgusting. So we're going to get into their crimes before they were incarcerated and where they are now. All right. So let's play.
This surveillance video shows Michael Brady in the moments before he and 3 other prisoners allegedly murdered 4 prison employees in their attempt to escape the Pasquotank Correctional Facility in October 2017. During day 3 of testimony, Special Agent Jennifer Matherly said that Brady and 3 other inmates collected weapons over a period of time in preparation for the attack.
Hammers, scissors, there was a wooden 2x4 with some nails, it looked like, in it.
During the attack, prison surveillance video showed inmates stabbing and attacking an employee and then dragging the body out of view. Prosecutors allege Brady set a fire in the stockroom as a diversion. Jurors then saw the prisoners making a run for it, with dozens of guards following. North Carolina Bureau of Investigation's Special Agent Robert Evans processed the crime scene. Evans presented gruesome photos of victims Veronica Darden and Justin Smith, as well as the rest of the crime scene. Some victims' family members sitting in court walked out. The pictures are too graphic to show on air. Investigators testify that when they processed the crime scene, they found car keys in the fence line and backpacks that they say the prisoners would have used if they successfully escaped. In Mania, North Carolina, Jacqueline Lay, 13 News Now.
Okay. So let's break down what we just saw. Michael Brady set a fire as a diversion. And they brutally killed 4 people. 12 more were injured. 10 of them were staff. 4 were actually other inmates. This was one of the bloodiest escape attempts in U.S. history. It's one of them. Now, we all know how prison is, how some of these nationwide prison system is. There's lots of violence behind bars. It's usually between 1 or more inmates. There are fights, there are gangs, there are drugs. They try to smuggle in contraband. They try to get the staff to participate. They try to get them to bring in contraband, try to blackmail the guards. This is a maximum security prison, which you call. That's a good question. But they do have a unit with medium security. They have a medium security unit, and the majority of the prison in Pasquotank is maximum security. We call it something else here in North Carolina. but we're gonna explain how they got their weapons, and the case, this prison escape in Dannemora, New York. Nobody got hurt, thank goodness. But you had 2 inmates on the lam in New York for days. So we all know that the reality of working in a prison, they throw bodily fluids on the guards. The guards are at risk for assaults. That's what you usually hear on the news. We had our own county jail here. 1 inmate attacked one of the guards and had to be taken to the hospital. He survived, thank goodness. But the security protocols that were in place at Pasquotank were actually laxed. After this incident in 2017, they had to make some changes to the prison system. They had to make quite a few, actually. So we're going to get into that later. So justice was served for the 4th inmate that committed this crime. So we have 4 defendants. We have Michael Brady, whose trial started in October of 2019, 2 years after the incident. He was the first of the 4 to stand trial for the 2017 prison attack. So the trial didn't last long. So on October 21st, 2019, Brady was found guilty of all 4 counts of first-degree murder and 10 other lesser charges, including attempted escape, assault with a deadly weapon, and arson. The offense of first-degree murder in North Carolina, we are a death penalty state. It's either life without parole or the death penalty. So during the first trial, the defense argued for Brady to be sentenced to life, citing the details of Brad's troubled childhood and past medical history of his psychiatric conditions. Brady's lawyer, Thomas Manning, summarized Brad's childhood into a poem. As a twig is bent, so goes over the tree. On the other hand, the prosecution sought the death penalty with District Attorney Andrew Wobel, citing the brutality of the attack and aggravating factors in the case. So the District Attorney Wobel quoted, "If the jury settled on life imprisonment, it would be open season on correctional officers in this state." So what happened to Michael Brady during the first trial? So the trial ended, the guilt phase started after October 21st. On October 28th, he was sentenced to death upon a jury's unanimous recommendation for capital punishment, making Brady the 143rd inmate to be condemned to death row in North Carolina. So there was 142 inmates held on death row in North Carolina at the time of Brady's sentencing. So our former governor, decided to grant clemency to some people on death row. I totally disagree with that. But what's done is done. So after he was sentenced to death, he was first held on death row at Central Prison in Raleigh. However, due to safety concerns for all parties involved, he was then transported to Big Sandy, a federal prison in Kentucky. In 2021, Brady was transferred to ADX Florence, a supermax. We all heard of that Supermax prison in Colorado, and he's in federal custody. The reasoning for it is this. They were afraid correctional officers in the state would retaliate, along with he was a flight risk. Guess what? He tried to escape and almost made it. He almost made it. The four actually almost made it. They were actually caught climbing the fence. That's how far they got. This is how far they got. The injuries were caused by stabbing and blunt force trauma with a hammer. And the stab wounds were so many. And the nurse testified, the former prison nurse, testified it was one of the worst she ever seen in her life. The worst. She had to go in, check everyone's pulse, help the paramedics get them to the hospital, where they later died. So the second defendant, Uzziah Buckman, was the second of the four to stand trial. He was supposed to be tried in 2020, but the little pandemic got in the way, so it was delayed multiple times until he was put on trial in October 2023. So that's 6 years after this incident. So Buckman was found guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder and 10 other felony charges. So on October 3rd, 2023, 35-year-old Uzziah Buckman was sentenced to death. But the jury voted 3 times for the death penalty in this case, in this trial. They voted for life without parole for one of them. So Buckman was also sent to the Supermax prison in Florence. And interesting, isn't it? How they send some of our criminals to Florence because they're escape risks. So don't try it. Don't try it at home. Don't try this at home. So you saw on the videotape that you saw the hammer that was used. It was a pretty big mallet that was used to inflict blunt force trauma to the staff's head and other parts of the body, along with other inmates, the other 3 stabbing them. Yeah, this was one of the bloodiest. The most since the Attica riots. Now this is quite different than what happened in Attica because it was a riot in the prison and people lost their lives. But this is one of the bloodiest attacks on staff in the country during an escape attempt. Now, some people have escaped from maximum security prisons before and went on crime sprees. But this doesn't really compare in recent memory. All right. Let's go to the third. Jonathan Monk became the third offender to stand trial for the 2017 Pasquotank prison murders. Jury selection lasted from February to March of 2025. So on March 18th of this year, the jury found Monk guilty on all 13 charges, including 4 counts of first-degree murder. And of course, no defense attorney wants to see their client executed by the state. But He tried to convince the jury to seek mercy. But the jury said, not on the North Carolina coast. And all prisoners have that commit these crimes have psychological issues. So I don't want to hear people say, "Oh, but he has issues." So does everyone else. So does everyone else. But that doesn't excuse his behavior. These 4 inmates. So on March 27th, 2025, 38-year-old Jonathan Monk was sentenced to death by Judge Foster upon the jury's unanimous recommendation for capital punishment. Apart from 4 death sentences, he received 60 to 81 years in prison for attempted first-degree murder. He was found guilty of the arson, attempted escape, and felony riot. So we covered the 3. All right. So we have Seth Frazier, 41 years old. He actually pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 6 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury, and 1 count each of burning a public building, inciting riot, attempting escape, and assault with a deadly weapon. So the 4th perp in this case got life, 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 93 to 116 years for all the lesser offenses. Sad, isn't it? That lacked prison security and protocols caused this. So after the incident, they had really straightened security protocols, including tighter restrictions on tool access, equipping guards with body armor, and providing supervisors with tasers. All right. So now the guards at our prisons in the state have tasers, which I think all of them should have it. If there's an incident, all they have to do is tase the person, and it probably would stop an attack dead in its tracks the first time the inmates try it. So that's so they are all in prison at the time that these crimes were committed. So we're going to go to Brady first. So Michael Brady, I looked up his rap sheet this evening, and guess what? This guy's one of the nastiest of them all. So he was convicted previously to attempted murder on a police officer. He got pulled over for a seatbelt violation, and this kid or whatever decided to open fire on a cop on the side of the road. And then he goes to prison. He gets sentenced to maximum of 24 years. He gets the book. He gets thrown in the book, the Riot Act, for what he did the first time. I don't think any parole board in their right mind would let this guy out early. If I was on the parole board, I'd probably deny it. I don't even have to hear it, you know? So this guy attempted murder. He goes 19 to 24 years. He was sentenced. So he had to serve 19 of his 24 years to even go up for parole. And he committed other offenses when he tried to kill a cop over a traffic stop, which he would just get a ticket. I don't understand some of these people. They when they attack cops with a firearm, they don't think they're going to get caught. You escape from prison. You think you're not going to get caught? You may be on the lam for 30 minutes, a couple hours to maybe a few weeks. But eventually they'll get you. They'll get you. And then you get additional time for escaping. And then you're sent to another facility where you're probably in solitary confinement. I think, in my opinion, that's even worse for inmates. So, Uzziah Buckman, what did he do to get into prison? Well, murder. He killed somebody. So on November 3rd, 2023, he was sentenced to death. Rightfully so, in my opinion. This monk guy, he was crazy. Let me see here. So Frazier the fourth one, he was in prison. Guess for what? He's a child molester. But he was serving he was sentenced to a good stretch in state prison. I'm surprised they even gave him a deal to spare his life. So this trial, the first few trials was they had to move the trial to another county because of the local outrage. So these trials were three of them were tried in Dare County. Yeah, these people are considered worst of the worst. All right. I'm just going to say it straight up. So, Monk was convicted of attempted first-degree murder for a brutal knife attack on Tabitha Dupree, the wife of a fellow soldier and friend named Justin Dupree. Although he claimed to have had a delusional episode triggered by PTSD and believed his children were in danger, Monk was sentenced to 13 years in state prison. I think he should have got more for it, but in North Carolina, we have a point system on previous offenses. You get so many points for each crime you commit, and then the higher the points, the longer your sentence is. So he may have not had as many points on his record for them to give him the max. But when it comes to first-degree murder, it doesn't really matter. So they're all in Florence Supermax prison. Sad, isn't it? That they threw their lives away just for an attempt at a few hours of freedom. So let me reiterate that more than 14 people were victims in this case, including other inmates and staff. They were all sent to the hospital with minor to major injuries. Only 4 died. And those were the prison staff. The inmates and other staff were injured. This is just unacceptable. I think that there has to be some kind of prison reform in this country where these inmates don't get access to weapons. So how did these inmates get weapons? They were in the stream stress shop. The prison has sewing, and you all know that some prisons have the inmates making license plates. So in this facility, they have a few programs for designed for inmates to adjust to life after incarceration. All right. This is beyond frightening. These inmates have access to screwdrivers, mallets, scissors that could be quickly sharpened into a weapon. So that's how they got the weapons. And there's video when the first inmate, Michael Brady, decided to set the fire that he did. There's surveillance tape showing that the sprinklers all went off and the floor was flooded. So not only did rescue personnel have to smell the smoke, but they were like ankle waist up in water, trying to even save lives, just for a little distraction. Now the Dannemora escape, the successful escape in New York, where did they get their weapons? Where did they get their tools to escape? Oh, yes, in the shop. Another program. So maybe they should do programs in prison where weapons cannot be smuggled out of shop class, or I don't think these inmates should be having anything sharp. We all know that if we watched prison documentaries such as 60 Days In, they you got to see the shanks and weapons that these inmates have all day to craft, and the guards have to search their cells and they find all this crap. Why in your right mind would you give inmates in a controlled situation access to screwdrivers, access to mallets, anything that can be used as a weapon, anything that can be stolen from the shop? There's one prison in New Mexico that makes wheelchairs. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Witchy Nicole. You're absolutely right. And the ones that are high risk, and the first one tried to kill a cop during a traffic stop. Should he been given access, so to speak, to scissors? And this was a failure of the system on all levels. As I said before, it's a cat and game mouse between the prison staff and the inmates over contraband. They find all these neat, crafty weapons that they make out of practically nothing at all. And they have, and you got to see some of these sheriffs in county jails in the United States. All this stuff they confiscate, drugs, they somehow get into the prison. Other contraband, such as cigarettes, some prisons have those banned. Lighters, anything to fuse objects together. I've seen pictures of toothbrushes with the razor blade attached. Those are dangerous. So why would you give inmates? Absolutely, Witchy Nicole. Absolutely. The prison system, the judicial system, they all failed. They all failed. Now we have a case in Kentucky where they didn't search an inmate or an arrestee good enough. Because guess what? This guy actually smuggled a gun into the interrogation room, asked for a cigarette break at 2 p.m., and then shot the officer. But the officer that got killed actually got a shot out of his weapon before, and that guy's dead. So there was no trial on that. Just a lawsuit. And how can you let this happen? These officers need to be retrained. Some of these police officers on searching people, because I watched 60 Days In a bunch of times, and you got to see the stuff that gets through. Handcuff keys, needles, the whole 9 yards. Oh, absolutely, Witchy Nicole. I 100% agree with you on that. So they need to, and if they do give them access to something like a screwdriver, something like a pair of scissors, I think they should be tethered down to an object that can't be removed. You know, like if they're cooking meals or something and there's a knife there, it's stuck to the table, it can't leave. And prisoners are like so far spaced apart. Yeah, they have to do something to prevent these items from reaching the general housing units. Because we have a problem in this country. We got a big problem. And it's not being solved. County jails in North Carolina, actually, all guards are equipped with this taser. Yeah, what you call, you got these cases. You got these cases where you got police negligence or prison negligence that leads to people's deaths. It's absolutely disgusting. So North Carolina learned a lesson with Pasquotank. And they had to do some renovations due to the damage. That cost more money. Yeah, I'm a big advocate, which you call, of this. Body cameras. Surveillance cameras. Because that's an eyewitness that cannot lie, cannot be confused. So the surveillance camera from the prison was aired as evidence to the jury. And there was no question of their guilt. No question whatsoever. Everything that happened, most of the events that happened were caught on tape. So actually, prison surveillance camera can be used as evidence. So can sometimes body cam footage. So police officers and prison guards are actually protected from false accusations. It actually protects the public too. So it's not just a case of there's a shooting, we need to know what happened. It actually protects good cops from being persecuted. So I'm a big advocate for those because videotape is something that cannot be you can't lie, you just watch the tape. You just watch the tape. So at least they got 4 convictions out of this. It took so long for the cases to go to trial, except for the first one. Yeah, absolutely. What you call it? These body cams actually exonerate officers. They actually hold them accountable for their actions. So it's a two-way street here. An inmate at a correctional institution can't make a false accusation against a guard. It's all on tape. So when there's an investigation into what happened, okay, let's look at the surveillance tape. And if they have to wear body cams, if there's another point of view, perhaps places where there's a blind spot. So, what's the state of the death penalty in North Carolina? All right. We haven't had an execution here in over 20 years. Let me see here. Last execution was in 2006. So what's the holdup? What's the holdup in North Carolina? There was legislation passed by the state assembly called the Racial Justice Act. So these inmates had another Hail Mary in court. They clogged up the court system with frivolous accusations that race played a factor in their conviction or sentence by the jury. And this was, I thought when that passed, I was like, oh dear. Oh dear. More delays. Death row inmates in America, they spend an average of 20 to 30 years in prison. If they're sentenced to death, in my opinion, it's death. It's not a life sentence plus death. And North Carolina has the right idea about capital punishment reform. So let's just so has anyone heard of the Ivana, I can't pronounce her last name, the one who was stabbed on the Lynx train in Charlotte? The judge released him OOR on previous charges, and he went onto a train, public transportation, and stabbed someone, a Ukrainian refugee or immigrant who didn't deserve what she got. It could have been prevented. It could have been prevented. The person who killed her had mental health issues. He should have been committed to a mental institution. But a judge let him out. So there's lots of reforms in the bill, Irana's law. And the other issue that was that plagues the death penalty in the United States is lack of lethal injection drugs. They can't get a hold of drugs to execute someone. So North Carolina, the state assembly said, wait a minute. There may be a chance that the inmates will never get executed because they can't get lethal injection drugs. So what they did, the state assembly, which is brilliant, was in Irana's law, they changed the method of execution, lethal injection, or another method to be determined by the Department of Corrections that is constitutional and is active in another state with the death penalty. So if they can't get the drugs, then they'll get the electric chair, they can get the firing squad, they can get the gas chamber. I don't think corrections has figured this out yet, but they will. And guess what? And guess what's in this death penalty bill? The section of the legislation. So I 100% agree with this part, where the state assembly actually said, okay, we're going to speed up these death row inmates' appeals. So if someone gets sentenced to death, they go before the appellate division within 18 months. And then the state Supreme Court can chime in if they choose to hear the case, and then it goes into the federal system within maybe 3 years. And of course, the federal system is kind of slow. You get a federal judge, and then you get the federal circuits, 1 through 12 circuits of yeah. I think Ohio is the same way, which you call so. But here's the thing, Witchy, all right? Ohio's method is lethal injection, but they can't get the drugs. So what can they do without the state lawmakers? Well, they can go to the Supreme Court and say, wait a minute, what are our options here? What are our options when it comes to capital punishment? We can't get lethal injection drugs. Can we ship them to another state with an alternate method of execution? Like the electric chair, firing squad. No need for lethal injection drugs, right? No need for that. But there's something in federal law that permits the federal government to change its method. And another issue that comes up with lethal injection, there was that Creech guy, and where was that? Idaho? That they couldn't find a vein. They couldn't find a vein to execute him, so it's been the execution has been stayed. And guess what? They're going to execute Coochie or whatever his name is, Creech, or they're going to execute him by firing squad. And they're probably going to schedule a new date of execution after July of 2026. So still, I think some of these states have to do that, have an alternate method on the books. So we have so these people that committed the prison escape attempt, they're our newest addition to death row. All right. We haven't executed someone since 2006, excuse me. Over 20 years. Well, probably in 2026 will be an execution spree. Yeah, it came from your governor, Witchy, because the governor looks and sees, okay, we have no lethal injection drugs. And the state mode of execution, I looked at this, in Ohio is lethal injection. So no drugs, the prison can't perform an execution. Yeah, but Witchy, don't you get mostly Republicans, a Republican majority now in state lawmaking and the governors? They're usually Republicans that are elected to Ohio office, except in some of the cities, which you'll get blue dots on the map. So I looked. Let's look. All right. Let's just look at the modes of execution in some of these states. Virginia and Colorado abolished the death penalty altogether. Connecticut found sentenced 2 people to death for home invasion. And the death penalty repeal in Connecticut is not retroactive. So the abolishment of the death penalty in Connecticut doesn't apply to anyone that's currently on death row. So if Connecticut doesn't have the death penalty anymore, they'll probably have to Connecticut will probably have to send them to another state just to be executed. Because I heard states such as Delaware, they got rid of their gallows. So my heart goes out to anyone in these prison guards that get attacked, because guess what? Aren't these inmates stupid? They're not going to get out of the institution. If they get into an argument with the guards, who's going to win? Who's going to win? And in my opinion, a lot of these criminals are stupid. They think they're smarter than everyone else, but then when you come down to it, they totally screw up. Then we had the New Orleans escape from their county jail, and they couldn't even keep up the building. They couldn't keep up the building to modern standards, and they actually had many escape just by removing a toilet and supposedly threatening someone to one of the staff, which I have no sympathy for, because the maintenance guy could have just went higher up and says, hey, one of the inmates just threatened me with a weapon, say to turn off the water. It could have been remedied at the administrative level. It's just, I'm gonna cover some of these old cases, because what's wrong with the true crime community these days is they cover a case that's in the news. They don't care whatsoever. They have wild conspiracy theories, and most of these theories that these true crimers come up with are totally bogus. There's no basis in fact for it. Some people milk cases for all it's worth, for money. So if I do true crime, it's going to be cases that are solved, not cases where the investigation is ongoing. Because if you put in a public records request, they don't have to give you information on the evidence. So you're just speculating anyway. Yeah, you have a Republican majority in Ohio, so things will get done. I heard there's a bill in the Ohio State House which will give alternate methods of execution in Ohio, and this should be just a temporary hiccup. This is just a temporary hiccup. So what should happen to people that commit murder behind bars? If they're already serving life sentences, they have nothing to lose, right? So this is where the death penalty comes in. Pretty clear. Well, they may have something to lose. They may have something to lose. It's called their life. If they commit acts of murder behind bars, some states they don't have the death penalty. They can just give you another life sentence on top of it without parole. And guess what? Is that justice? And death penalty, anti-death penalty people, they say, well, it's not a deterrent. Well, that may be true. But what about an appropriate sentence for some of these psycho serial killers? They have no feelings. They're primarily sociopaths. They're evil. They sit there and they kill 15, 20 people and have no respect for human life whatsoever. The only ones that I'll have sympathy for is the victims involved. The victims' families. And I don't think it's fair for these victims' families to wait 30 years for a resolution to the in the appeals process. They should know within a few years whether their loved one's killer is going to get executed or not. Isn't there such a thing as closure, or supposed to be? Well, I don't think there's such a thing as justice, true justice. So I want to thank the 3 people or 4 that came in tonight. I really appreciate it. Don't hesitate to send in a donation and hit the thumbs up. All right, on replay. So thanks for coming, and I'm going to hit the road and get me something to eat. So, bye-bye.